Hey, this is Cannaday, and today we're taking a look at a new hero pack for Marvel Champions, and that is Thor. All right, let's take a look at the Thor pack for Marvel Champions here. This is the hero pack. Let's just take a look at what comes inside. So first you have Odin's son, the alter ego of Thor. So his ability here is Worthy. Action, search your deck or discard pile for Mjolnir. Upgrade, add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck, limit once per round. So here's Mjolnir. This is going to give him +1 attack when he's in hero mode and the aerial trait. And of course it's restricted, cost 1. And it is a lightning resource. If you end up discarding it and using it and then using this action to get it back out of the discard pile. He has 2 recovery. You flip him over to Thor here. He has 1 thwart, which I'll take note of because he doesn't have a whole lot to deal with the threat that builds up in this game. So that's one of the things about Thor. He's very much about attacking instead. He has 2 attack and 2 defense, but of course if he gets that Mjolnir out, he can have that 3 attack, so he'll be swinging for 3 as things go along. So that is his abilities on his hero card there with his little Mjolnir that he can get. Some of his other cards are Asgard. A thing to note about Thor is that his hand size starts at 5, which is pretty low for most of the alter egos for Odin's son. And then on Thor here, it goes up to 4. So it goes down to 4 actually, and it's a very limiting hand size for Thor there, so it's kind of hard to play some of the higher number cards. Asgard, if you can get it out, it costs 3, but you'll get +1 to your hand size for the rest of the game as long as it doesn't get discarded out of play. So that's definitely very useful. You have 2 God of Thunders, so these cost 2, and then it is a hero resource. You exhaust God of Thunder to generate a lightning resource. So this is another way to help with that hand size limitation you have. You can exhaust these to go ahead and create resources, and you can do it as many times as you want. We've seen a lot of cards that do that, but have limited uses. And then here is an ally, Lady Sif, that as a response, when she enters play, you ready Thor or Odin's son. So you can basically ready your hero when she comes in, and then 2 thwart, which you're definitely going to need some allies with thwart, because Thor's not super good at taking care of the threat, and then 2 attack. And she is a wild resource, so she could utilize with some of the cards in the deck that are going to use those lightning symbols. Then we have Thor's helmet. So this costs 2, gives you +5 hit points, which he starts with 14 hit points. This will bring him up to a respectable 19 if you're able to get it down, but it also costs 2 for this upgrade. You have 4 Asgard, which allows you to go through the deck or discard pile and search for a card with the Asgard trait and add it to your hand, and then you shuffle your deck. This is going to allow you to get certain cards, like if you wanted to get Lady Sif out or Asgard itself, because of course you need to mitigate your hand size somehow. So that's pretty good. Also, with Thor's ability, whenever you engage a minion, you will draw 2 cards. So this is very useful, but it is only once per phase. So if you end up getting a bunch of minions on you all at the same time, it's only going to trigger once during the enemy phase and then once during the hero phase. And how could minions attach to you during the hero phase? Well, Defenders of the 9 Realm. So this one, you can discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion in play, engage with you, and then remove 3 threat from the scheme. So this costs 0. It'll do this, and if you're, of course, in Thor, which you have to be to play this card, you're going to be able to draw 2 cards as well. So you have to weigh the balance. You still are going to end up having to deal with those minions and figure out what to do with them. But that is a way to do it. And you actually get 3 of those in the deck, so you're going to be trying to do that a little bit. Then, to help you deal with those minions, especially if you get small ones out there, there is 2 lightning strikes. So this one's really cool. You can spend X lightning resources to deal X damage to the villain and each minion engaged with you. This attack ignores the tough status if you have the aerial trait, which of course you get from having Mjolnir out. But this is really cool because you can combo it with your God of Thunders and a whole bunch of other lightning cards that have the lightning resource in your deck, and hopefully be able to hit the minions pretty hard and hit the villain at the same time, especially if you get a bunch of minions stacked up on you at the same time. And then here's the main damage dealing card. We have Hammer Throw. So what this is going to do is you're going to exhaust Mjolnir, which is important because there are several other cards in the deck that are going to exhaust Mjolnir. So you can't play those first and then play this. You have to play this first and then deal 8 damage to the enemy and return Mjolnir to your hand. This attack gains overkill. So you could take out a minion and carry the damage over to the villain as well. This is probably the best way to deal damage, but it does cost a whopping 3, which is sometimes hard for Thor to overcome, seeing that his hand size is normally only 4. So there you go. That is all the Thor cards. So let's go ahead and go to the aggression cards. So here is another weapon for Thor. This is, of course, restricted again. It costs 1, and after your hero attacks an enemy, you can spend a fighting resource to deal 2 damage to an enemy. So that's really cool. So it can basically, if you have Thor out and Mjolnir out, that makes him have a total of 4 attack when he attacks. If you also are going to discard an aggression or a fighting resource, then you're going to be able to deal 5 when you attack with Thor, if you're able to do all that at the same time. So that's pretty cool to be able to combo all of that together. So that's a good card with this. But then, of course, this also combos with Mean Swing, which when a hero makes a basic attack, exhaust a weapon card upgrade you control, your hero gets +3 for this attack. This is an event that can trigger off of these weapons. And there's 3 of those in the deck. Technically, you could play 2 of them on your turn. If you had both of these unexhausted, you could exhaust both of them and play 2 Mean Swings and hit for like 11, which would be pretty cool. I haven't been able to pull that off, but maybe someday. Battle Fury is another card here. This one is another one that kind of helps you deal with little tiny minions a little bit. Play under a player's control, max 1 per player. Then, after your hero attacks and defeats a minion, deal 1 damage to your hero, discard Battle Fury, and ready your hero. So this allows you to, if you beat a minion, you can then ready and then go back at it. But you're going to be discarding the Battle Fury when that happens, so you're only going to be able to do it once, and you got to take a little bit of a damage for it. Of course, then there's, let's see, Get Over Here. This is one that deals 1 damage to a minion, and if you have the aerial trait, you engage the enemy. So this is really good in multiplayer. If somebody else has a minion in front of them, you can pull the minion over to you instead, and with Thor's ability, if a minion engages you, you'll be able to draw your 2 cards, and yeah, that's if you have Mjolnir out. Of course, you have to have the aerial trait to do that. But it'll ping a little guy for a little bit of damage, and it only costs 0 to play. Now let's look at Hall of Heroes. So when you're facing off against all these minions, if this is in play, after you defeat a minion, you put a glory counter on here. Then you can exhaust Hall of Heroes while you're in alter ego mode. So if you are Odin's son, then you can remove 3 of the glory counters from it to draw 3 cards. So this basically lets you tell the tales of the stories of all the guys you beat up and draw a bunch of cards, which is really cool. And then let's take a look at some of the allies here. Valkyrie. So Valkyrie basically is 3 cost, 1 thwart, 2 attack. Of course, more thwart in the Thor deck is really good because he needs to be able to help out mitigate some of the threat out there. But also response after Valkyrie enters play, deal 2 damage to a minion, 3 damage instead if you paid for this using a lightning resource, which of course, if you're spending your God of Thunder, makes it really easy to pull off if you have that stuck on the table. But yeah, so she can attack a few times or thwart a few times. Definitely a good ally to have out there and do a little bit of damage with. And then this one I'm not quite sure about. So Hercules costs 6. Oh my goodness, that's really expensive. He has 1 thwart and 3 attack. 3 attack's pretty solid. He does take consequential damage for both those still, but he only has 4 hit points. But you reduce the cost to play Hercules by 1 for each minion engaged with you. So I've tried really hard to play this guy out, and with your limited hand size with Thor, the fact that like this side you only have 5, this side you only have 4, to even be able to play this guy, you have to have a couple minions attached to you with a full hand and drop him down. Of course, you can mitigate that with extra card draw and paying extra things like that, but he still is going to end up hurting himself. He's going to end up doing like 12 damage over the whole time. I guess that's good overall, but he's really hard to get to stick to the table. And and majority of the time I end up just spinning him for a resource just because he's so expensive to play. But if there's that perfect situation where you have tons of minions sprawled across the table, you can throw him down and he can be smacking people for 3 damage. But yeah, Hercules, really expensive guy. Speaking of expensive allies, let's talk about Heimdall. So he has 5. Heimdall's actually really cool. So 2 thwart, 4 hit points, and he has 1 consequential damage. He's going to take 2 consequential damage if he attacks with his 3 attack. But response, after he enters play, look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck, discard 1 of them, and put the rest back in any order. I think Heimdall's cool, but he's really expensive in this Thor deck because Thor has an issue with being able to play some of the higher cost cards. But I think if you're able to get the resources out, when you can actually get him played, he'll definitely help you out with a thwart a lot, which should be good. But he might even be cooler in other decks. But he does have the Asgard trait, so you can pull him out with the keyword there. And then here we have Invulnerability. This card's interesting as well. It costs 3. Hero action, give your hero a tough status card. So this card is really hard to play in the Thor deck. Majority of the times when I played it, I was just like, why would I play that over any other card in my hand? It was just hard to justify the cost of 3. I would much rather be getting out God of Thunders to be able to do more stuff, or figuring out ways to pay Hammer Throw to deal a bunch of damage. Just being able to have just a tough status card, and the first time you take damage, being able to block that didn't seem worth the cost of 3. Maybe there's going to be some crazy shenanigans with this after like Doctor Strange that mixes those things up comes out, but currently this is hard, and this isn't even the aggression type, so you can't play the cards that give you basically like the repeated cards like Power of Aggression to make it cheaper. It's basically just going to cost you 3. It also comes with Chase Down in this, which are duplicates of cards that we already had for aggression out of the base set. But yeah, I would actually switch this one out for another card that came in this box just for the deck, but this is the card that is currently in that one. So who knows? Maybe it'll be good. Maybe I'm just wrong. And of course you get your 3 max 1 per deck cards here that give you the double resources, which you definitely need for Thor. And it's cool when you get them in your hand. And then Avengers Mansion, which is always awesome, but hard to play with a cost of 4 sometimes. But maybe you'll get lucky and get 2 of these and 1 of these in your hand, and that can help set you up for the rest of the game. Cool. Well, let's take a look at some of the other cards here that are in this starter deck for Thor. Here's the Obligation, Odin's Anger. Give to the Odin Son player. You may flip to Alter Ego and choose exhaust Odin's Son, remove Odin's Anger from the game, or you can discard Mjolnir from your hand or play. You are stunned, discard this Obligation. So yeah, definitely super thematic with Odin getting rid of Mjolnir and stunning you. Then you have Loki, which is super tricky here. He has 2 scheme and 2 attack, which is rough. 4 hit points. Interrupt. When Loki would be defeated, discard the top card of the encounter deck. If that is a treachery, heal all damage from Loki instead. Thor's nemesis minion. So Loki could just keep popping back out and keep messing with you if trickeries are on the very top of the villain deck, which could be rough. Family Feud. When revealed, place 1 additional threat here for each Asgard card in play. And man, if this comes out, you're probably like late game, you're probably going to have a ton of those Asgard cards in play because most of the cards that stick on the table for Thor are Asgard cards. So that's rough. And Thor himself is an Asgard card. Frost Giant. So 1 scheme, 3 attack. He has toughness. Yeah, just rough there. 4 hit points. Trickster. I'll let you discover some of these on your own. But yeah, super messy cards that are going to mess you up if those end up coming out, which is normally the case with most of the nemesises. Okay, let's take a look at some of the extra cards that come in here. Under Surveillance, attached to the main scheme, max 1 per player. Increase the target threat value to the attached scheme by 1. Cool. So, or by 4, I mean. So you can have 1 per scheme, and this will make it so that it's not going to trigger nearly as fast, or it's not going to go over the max, and you can end up lasting a little bit longer, which would be good with Thor because he's not super good at thwarting. Teamwork, this card looks really cool. When you use the basic thwart or basic attack power, exhaust an ally you control, add the ally's matching power to your hero's power for this use. So you might say, why wouldn't I just attack with the ally normally? Well, almost all allies have consequential damage, so you'd end up being able to keep that character in play longer. Of course, if you're playing this, you wouldn't be using a aggression guy, but this will definitely be really cool for a leadership deck. Then Second Wind, heal 4 damage from an identity, 5 damage instead if you paid for this using a science resource. Cool. And then here's the card I was saying, I feel like this should have been in there instead of Invulnerability, even just in the base set. This should have been in Thor's deck, I think. Enhanced Physique. So this is one of those cards that's very similar to other ones we've seen in some of the other hero packs. Exhaust Enhanced Physique, remove 1 physical counter to it, generate a fighting resource, which can also help with some of your other cards, like his other weapon here, which you need fighting resources for to be able to trigger the 2 extra damage. I feel like this could be an easy swap in for Invulnerability, and I actually played the deck with that a couple times, just because I'm like, hey, I'm not ever going to play Invulnerability, but I might play this card on an off chance. So there is that. All right, so here is basically everything you get in the Thor pack all together. Let's zoom out here a little bit. Here's all the stuff. Lots of new cards, of course, with each of these hero packs. Lots of awesome stuff to change up your Marvel Champions game. Let's get to what I think. All right, so the Thor hero pack. I definitely like Thor as a hero in the comics overall. Definitely like the guy that just comes in there and tears everything up. And I think obviously aggression fits really well with the whole Thor theme. And I really like aggression as general, just because it's like racing the clock with a threat, trying to smash down the bad guy as fast as possible. So this Thor deck is kind of interesting because I've had a kind of like, it's been kind of hard to play. I play a lot solo, so Thor makes it a little bit more difficult because he can't really take care of the threat nearly as much, and his limited hand size makes it so that it's kind of hard to set up like your engine of getting the extra resources and getting extra cards just because you're like having to spend whole turns just to get those cards down the table, and the whole time the villain clock is ticking with that threat going up, and you got to figure out ways to try to mitigate that while also not taking too much damage. You kind of have to stay in like Thor mode to make sure like you're only like not letting the villain scheme a lot. But yeah, it's definitely super interesting because I've played against Rhino and won and lost like with basic Rhino, which is normally not super normal. Like I normally like wipe that villain out easily. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Thor really relies on villains coming out of the deck while he's in Thor mode so he can draw extra cards. And it's kind of like a whole engine in that. But then, once the minions come out of the deck, you're having to figure out ways to take care of all those minions that are kind of in your way, which of course slowing you down from actually doing the aggression stuff of taking out the villain themselves. It's kind of like it's definitely interesting to play because it's this whole like balance of how many minions do I try to pull out of the deck with certain cards and make it so I can draw extra so I can build up my engine. And then finally it's like, okay, now I get all these out. Now I can play Hammer Throw and be able to do a lot of damage to the villain. It's definitely a very interesting deck to play, and I feel like it's probably a lot better with multiple people where you have like, you're kind of sharing the load of taking care of the threat and taking care of the stuff at the table so that Thor can build himself up a little bit. Because once he gets completely built out, he's a beast with being able to have all the extra energy and to be able to play a bunch of his like electric, like his thunder shocks and all that stuff, which are really cool. But he's kind of hard to play sometimes, and I think it's very interesting. Like they have some cool allies in there, but they are extremely expensive. Like Thor has issues with resources just because his hand size is so small, and then you have like Hercules, which probably majority of the time when you have in your hand, you're going to just end up using it for a resource because he's so hard to play. It's very situational to be able to get him on the table. And then Heimdall is really cool too. Lets you like scry through the top of the deck and kind of set up your turns, but costing 5 makes it really hard to get him onto the table. You're having to basically waste everything else on your entire turn just to get this character down, which I guess is kind of how it needs to be. You can have some like really crazy turns sometimes, like if a minion comes out on the enemy phase, and then on your turn you pull another one out, and you get to draw like 4 extra cards. You could end up having enough cards to play out all this different stuff. But a lot of times you're going to want to be playing like Hammer Throws and Lightning Shocks just to deal with the villains in front of you, because you can't just ignore them and build up your board, which I normally do in most of these games. My go-to in Marvel Champions is like, get the cards out that stick on the table because you'll be able to utilize those the rest of the game. Get those out early. And in Thor, I've had to like aggressively mulligan like the very beginning just to like have a good hand, because it's like if I don't have a good hand at the beginning, it's like the rest of the game is going to be really hard from there on out. I got to get set up the first few turns because the threat counter is counting down. And I've had some where I've gotten some allies out early and been able to survive. I took out Rhino after a couple tries, and then I've taken out Ultron and Green Goblin. A lot of the bad guys that have a lot of minions coming at you are easier because it's going to let you draw more cards, which kind of mitigates the whole hand size thing. If you're playing against a villain that doesn't have many minions in it, you're going to have a lot of issues being able to draw cards, which makes it why Rhino, strangely, is really hard for Thor to deal with. I enjoy this deck, and I'm excited to do a lot more deck building with it, because I feel like in the long run, with all the cool resource things that Thor has in his deck, you'll be able to make a really cool deck out of this, especially when you customize it and make it the way you want. Maybe put some cheaper cost allies in there, put some stuff that's going to help him with resource management, and Thor can really rock and roll. But the starter deck itself is hard. I mean, obviously, I recommend this. It's a lot of fun, but it's a little bit more difficult to play with the Thor deck than I have had with the other decks. So hey, how is everybody enjoying Marvel Champions? I'm really excited about the scenario pack and more stuff coming from it. Hopefully they're going to be able to figure out the distribution stuff with these so people can actually get a hold of them. But yeah, I'm excited to try out new stuff. Tell me what you're excited about playing in Marvel Champions. What heroes would you like to see added to the game? Thanks so much for checking out this review, and I'll see you on the next one.